Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Kenneth.
And I'm Anne, and we're Culture Crossroads.
We are a podcast where we sit down and talk about the differences between English and German cultures, as well as other cultures at the same time.
So I'm German, and Kenneth is American. So that is the main cultures we talk about, but we're just generally interested in the differences and similarities.
That is true. So, I would say let's go ahead and jump into the first topic that we have, which is learning a foreign language using media and how we went about it. So, how I went about learning German using media or any other internet related stuff, and how Anne learned about English.
That is really true. So do you want to start?
Sure. So, for my learning German, it all started whenever I was in school. So that's not really media, but that's where it all started with learning German. But
You had a book, right?
I did have a book, and you've
Yeah.
seen the type of books that I've used, and you would tell me like no one talks like that. So it's kind of I had to go outside to learn more German, like more casual German than just like straight up the structures given to me in the book. So that means I went to news. So I went to Tagesschau. I watched Tagesschau
Yeah.
and used them, which that helped because they spoke pretty fast. And so I had to constantly try to keep up with them and try and think about what they're saying. And so I got better and better at listening to German. But as far as speaking wise, I still remained not so fluent in that regard. So I used news, and then also I started watching a YouTuber that was German as well. And, I watched games and listened to German at the same time. And I still do that with Twitch as well. I go and listen to some German streamers.
Oh, that's cool.
Mhm.
So after like how many years of learning did you feel comfortable to listen to news and you felt like you understand like 70% of it or 80?
Where I felt pretty confident in my listening ability that I'm not missing a word would be
Oh,
about, I would say about a year. I would say because,
wow.
or a little bit less because I listened to it solid for like a whole 3 months, 4 months. So almost every day listening to that stuff. So I got really good in that amount of time, but I never got so confident that I know 100% what this person is talking about. So I would say within like the 4 months, I got really good, but then after that, it was kind of like I didn't watch it as much. So it kind of faltered after that.
But that's impressive. And did you feel like it depends on the topic if you understand something better or less good?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Because,
and
yeah.
when I was in high school taking the classes, we would learn about these different topics. So there was weather, there was environment, and then while I was watching the newscasts, they would speak about these sort of topics, and I would hear the words that I was learning in class and be able to understand it from there.
That's cool. That's impressive, really. Yeah, I just talked about that yesterday with a friend or 2 days ago. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he's from Chile and he doesn't take German class because he says there's no point on taking the German class we offer here. And I
Oh.
think he's partly right because when you come to a different country and to live there, the first things you want to know is where do I get food? Where do I get water? Where do I sleep? How do I do my visa so I'm not illegal here?
Mm-hmm.
And what laws are different to my country that I can't may break because I don't know better, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And nothing of that is touched in the first language classes you get here.
Really?
So yeah, and I have to agree with him. I mean, it's clever to take a German class, especially since they're free for the students here. But on the other hand, I totally understand his problem that he says the important things they're touched later after 2 or 3 years where you
Mm-hmm.
already know all that stuff anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it makes even more sense to go by media or look up a YouTube video on how to survive in Germany
Mm-hmm.
than actually just learning the grammar when you already live in the country. And you
Yeah.
don't, and you're just at home, then it's absolutely fine to learn like normal people
Mm-hmm.
in language classes. But when you're in a country and you need information, a language course will not help you as much as it should.
Yeah, I feel like that comes down to, you have these classes that teach you all these different structures, and you can hear these structures and be able to recite them back to a teacher. But imagine stepping outside and someone doesn't use that exact structure, and then you
Yeah.
hear it and you're kind of like, you're wrong. And then it's kind of like you don't understand some things because they're not using the structure that you learned specifically. So I would say it's much more useful to go and learn from talking to natives and using the language
Yeah.
outside of the classroom, because you get to know exactly how to use the language, even with its sort of different rules, like
Yeah.
publicly understood rules.
Yeah, that's true. I just had a friend stopping by at my work because, like, I work with people who learn languages. I don't
Mm-hmm.
really want to go into what I do, but anyway, he stopped by and he was like, "Can you tell me how I can learn like slang? Because so many German people use slang, but there's no class on that. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably so hard to learn it. I mean, I don't know because I just speak it, but
Mm-hmm.
do you have any experience with not understanding slang?"
I would say English, like there's a new slang word every week or so, and so it's it's
That's
it's
funny.
it's pretty difficult. Like they go through slang really quickly, and so any advice that I would give about learning slang would just be to go talk to people, and if you don't understand it, ask them what it means. And it might be a little embarrassing because the slang might be something that someone doesn't want to explain. Um,
True.
and it might sound pretty uh, embarrassing to go and ask that, but sometimes you gotta fight through that if you actually want to learn this stuff. So it's a one-time thing. You go ask somebody what this means, you get embarrassed, you're better for knowing it though. So
I don't think you can get embarrassed. Like I might personally just made yeah, I found out that it helps to insist on somebody explaining it. No matter how embarrassing it is, no matter how dumb or rude or anything,
mm-hmm.
because then next time if somebody uses it, you know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than somebody uses it and you don't even know what it means and nobody wants to explain it to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why also when people ask me stuff that is embarrassing, I don't feel embarrassed to explain it because in the end it helps them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like with me, like I'm the type of person that doesn't like to cause somebody. Well, I think I touched on this previously about how I just feel kind of awkward whenever I have to ask somebody to repeat something or do something over because I don't want to inconvenience them. But in which case it can be very detrimental to someone learning. So it does really help
Yeah.
to be, straightforward,
Did
saying I
you
don't understand this and tell me.
did you get in touch with German slang so far at
Uh,
all?
with German slang for me, I would say there's very few words that I know in German slang.
Yeah.
So if someone just started speaking German slang to me, I would just like nod and smile.
I think
So,
there are like 3 movies, it's a series of movies that are really good for German slang, but I don't know if you have watched them. They're called Fuck You Goethe.
I
And
feel
fuck
like
is spelled wrong, you is spelled wrong, and Goethe is spelled wrong as well. And
really.
it's yeah, it's on purpose. Um, and it's about like it's just a funny comedy video movie, but it has a lot of slang, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it would make sense to watch it with German subtitles since I don't think there's an English version.
Mm-hmm.
But then you can pause it and you can look up what he just said, and
Mm-hmm.
I think these 3 movies would be perfect to learn slang because you can take your time with them. But other than that, I've not found a way for people to learn slang other than just listening to native speakers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
I
don't
would
know.
like whenever I know English can kind of be difficult with that. I mean, if you don't know English and you're trying to learn the slang here, and someone just uses it, I mean, I feel the same way about German slang, because if I don't speak German that well and someone starts using a lot of slang I don't understand, it can get confusing. But it's like, there's some words in English that I just kind of gloss over and I'm like, okay, that's slang. I know it's slang. I may not know what it means, but I'm just going to gloss over it. And as far
you
as
know context-wise what it means, right? You just
What?
know it from context, while a foreigner probably has problems to understand the whole sentence because of this one word.
Context clues, yeah, that really helps out a lot.
Have you read any German book so far?
So yeah, I've that book that I had shown you previously. It's called Tanz dein Leben. I've been reading that, and by reading that, I haven't read it in probably a few weeks, but just because of some work. But what I do is I sit there with dick.cc open, so it's kind of the app for German to English, and I just sit there and look up words that I don't understand, and also use my context clues at the same time. So I kind of can somewhat understand what a word means from the context clues, and then I look it up and I see that I'm right. So it's kind of like quizzing myself the entire time.
That's amazing. I love that. I just tried to find my one English book I have because I know it's somewhere. Do you know this book? Well, it's mirrored probably. It's called Numbers.
Numbers, okay.
It's really nice. I love it. I also hold the upside down. I love that book because it was the first book I ever read in English. And it has a lot of slang because the main character isn't well educated at all, and also the people she's talking to are not speaking proper high English. So I had to push through that a lot to just understand what it means. Like, you know how you can say I don't know, or you can say I don't know, and the other actually spell it out DUNNO, and I didn't know what it meant for like half of the book.
Really?
And then at some point, because I refused to look it up because I understood the context. So I was like, no, you're not gonna look that up. You're gonna understand it at some point. And at some point I made like, I got it. Now I know what it means. And it makes so much more sense. And I think I read the book twice so far because it's a really good story too. But yeah, sometimes I don't feel like looking something up, and I really just wanna like see if I can figure it out myself.
Yeah, that's really good. Like there's some words in the book Tanz dein Leben that, you know, I go to look up on dick.cc and it's not in there. And I'm kind of like,
it doesn't make sense.
I'm like, why? It's not formal, and so it doesn't register in that app. So I have to pretty much make an assumption as to what it means and see if it fits in the context. And if it somewhat fits in my mind, I'm good. I can move on.
Yeah, right. But like, if you have any questions, you can always just write me. You know that, right?
That is true. I do know that.
I mean, you have a native German person here, and use that. Just use it as an
ultimate
encyclopedia.
Encyclopedia. As far as other media that I could recommend to use, I mean, I feel like it's almost, you know, become normal for people who don't know a language and want to learn language is using language learning apps. And one of the biggest one is Duolingo that I used for a good bit for German and any other language that I wanted to, you know, look at and see how it was. So I used Duolingo for a good bit, and I kind of got bored of it because I kept flying through these lessons because I knew the German words and how to use the sentences and everything. And I kind of got bored because I'm like, I'm having to do all this that I already know. I'd just like to skip ahead. And there are some ways that you can skip ahead, but it's kind of like, I don't know. I felt like I knew a lot, which it's always nice to go back and look at the basics, but I kind of got deterred off that. So I'm currently...
I feel you there.
Currently not doing anything with that. But yeah, that's a good way to go learn any language. I want to try out the
No,
English
yeah.
as well. I want to try that out and see if I can pass to the end. Take the final,
Yeah.
skip to the very end and see if I can do good.
I feel you there, absolutely. I tried to do English and Duolingo and it didn't work out for me at all because I was just skipping and skipping and skipping and skipping. And even when you do the language test in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
I think that was not when I started like streaming and doing this and all that, where I speak like now I speak English like 7 days a week,
All the
you know?
time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then back then I was speaking English because I was forced to because I lived in a country, but I've still felt uncomfortable doing it. So I was at like 80%, or I
Mm-hmm.
think 81
Mm-hmm.
when I did the test. And it was like, even then I was still skipping and skipping and skipping because I knew everything. And the bad thing about Duolingo, or good, I don't know, is that you can't skip too much because then it asks you to take a test that takes forever once you're in the higher levels. Because
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, do this 20 vocabularies and that 50 like grammar stuff. And it was so
Mm-hmm.
annoying because I knew everything. And then I hated
Yeah.
it. I just couldn't learn with it.
I have a friend that has completed the entire German track probably 4 times.
Crazy. That is
Like,
crazy.
and he is really good at speaking German too. Like
Yeah, I bet.
he knows the structures and everything, and he can sit down and talk to you about all that. Um, but I don't know. I couldn't sit down and do that 4 times in a row. I I
No,
just I
no.
just couldn't. At that point, I would just go and start speaking to people in German just completely
But that's
as much as
clever.
possible. But yeah, it's really he did like he had like a 300-day streak on that thing. So 300 days
Wow.
just straight going on Duolingo every day. Yeah, it was kind of like impressive.
So when I was doing that in the US, I also did the opposite thing, like
Mm-hmm.
the ones you wanted to do too, like going from English to German,
Mm-hmm.
so learning German.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had a hard time to do that, not because of the German, but because I had a hard time to read the question because that was
Really.
in English. Yeah, sometimes there were words used that I just wouldn't use in a normal context because I wasn't used to it. But
Mm-hmm.
as I said, my English was way worse than now. Right now, I feel pretty comfortable. I text in English, I speak in English, I work in English, I write in English, everything.
Mm-hmm. One other thing that really I would just go and start reading stuff in German as well. So like rather than just listening to uh
Yeah.
the Tagesschau, I would go and read the articles as well. So that would help out with my reading ability, and so I could sit down and read the stuff and know what I'm listening to and know how it goes together as well. I do sometimes have problems with where to put umlauts and everything, and how to pronounce some stuff. But like sitting down and
Yeah, I
reading that
was about to
stuff,
say.
sitting
Like
down and reading is not a problem.
pronunciation is hard. If you only read, you don't still don't know how to say it.
Mhm.
That sucks sometimes. Like when I came to the US and my boss made me read all these research papers,
Mhm.
I didn't understand them. Then he was like, "Can you summarize it for me?" And I was struggling so hard because I didn't know how to pronounce the words because I was just reading them.
Mhm.
So yeah, just reading isn't, in my opinion, that's not helping you too much, but it's also
Mhm.
helping you in spelling because
Mhm.
then you know how to spell words.
Mhm. Yeah. That's where I probably fall short is uh the spelling and everything. Pronunciation definitely is huge because some words I cannot pronounce, and whenever I tried to say them to you before, you'd be like, why are you saying it like that? You're like the umlaut. Whenever I try to pronounce one of the umlauts and I pronounce it differently, it's kind of like I didn't know I was saying that wrong. I thought that was what it was supposed to be, but if you don't
Yeah,
sit down
I
and
feel
speak it,
you.
it
Like,
can.
okay, when I was in the US, I started to watch Netflix, and in the US, you cannot watch in German. There's no way. They didn't have yet Netflix originals that much yet,
Mhm.
and the only language possible was English with English subs. And I watched Pretty Little Liars I think, every episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I began with sitting down, have English subs on, and then pausing the video, repeating what they said. That's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
Every evening, I would just watch and then I would pause and repeat it just to understand how to pronounce stuff. And first, it was really fast for me. So I had to pause anyway because I had to rewatch everything like 3 times just to understand it because it was so fast. But I really improved over time. And then at some point, I didn't have to repeat it anymore. My brain would just pick up the words, how to say them.
And yeah, watching back, that's what I would do is I would sit there and watch German videos and I would repeat the stuff back and try and say it. I would pause, say it. So I'd watch a YouTube video and I'll say it back because, you know, I might have seen it written down, but I never knew how to say it. And I'm like, oh, that's how you say it. So I would pause it and go and say it myself so I would understand and be able to say it next time.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did too, because it's super helpful. And then if you have to write something down completely out of context, like at work or wherever, you suddenly remember that you saw how to write it and you know how to pronounce it, and you can be really proud of you because you remember because you repeated it back. So that's a cool thing I love about that.
There's also another software that I use to try and learn other languages. So I would use something called Anki, which is kind of like a flashcard type software.
Oh, yeah.
And you can do this with like regular flashcards as well. Is write down the words and then the meaning on the back in your language. So I'd write down a German word and then the English version on the back. And so you could, what it does is if you know something and you get it right, so let's say you it gives you a word and you say the English version, you flip it over to see you're right, you put it in like I know that pile. And then if you're kind of unsure about one and then you still get it right, you put it in a unsure pile. And then if you don't know one at all, you flip it over, you put it in a I have no idea pile. And so pretty much what it does is like it works on that memory. So learning what it is a lot of forgetting. So what you want to do is if you know something really good, then it'll put it off until a long way later. But if you don't know something, it'll repeat it until you get it. And then it'll bring it up a long time later to see if you actually know it. So it's using that whole forgetting and then trying to bring back the memory of it.
That's cool. I totally can't learn anything like that. Like I just can't. It's a learning method that doesn't work with my brain. But what my mom used to do, I don't know if I already told you that, but when I was younger, my mom would like print out these little tiny, papers and just write on them the English word and just put them in the space. So for example, she would write hairdresser and then she would put it on a hairdryer and just leave it there in the sink, and she labeled the whole house. She labeled everything.
Wow.
And see, it actually helped because if you see it like all the time, every single day of your life, you will remember it. So when I was sitting in class, informatics class, I think, my teacher asked, what's the English term for keyboard? Okay, now I say the English term because podcast is in English, but he obviously asked in German. And I was the only person. Tastatur.
Okay. Tastatur is keyboard.
And I was the only person in the whole room that knew it, just because my mom had labeled that stuff like 3 years ago and just left the labels on there forever.
Wow.
So it actually helps to just label the whole freaking house and every item you have.
Yeah, like that. I've always seen people do that, and I've never done it myself, and I feel like it's something I probably should do because I think it'd help out a lot. But they're like that whole flashcard thing, I only did it for like a short sprint because at some point I'm just kind of like, I don't kind of want to do this anymore. But if you're really dedicated, you'd end up doing it as much. Like my friend who did Duolingo for 300 days straight. So if you're really dedicated. But yeah, sitting there and having that. Also, one other small thing I want to say is I love the German word for a hairdryer. Isn't it Föhn?
Föhn, yeah.
I love it. 10 out of 10 word. But
What? Why?
I just like it. It's a nice word.
Funny.
Föhn. Yeah.
Föhn.
I think it
There's
sounds
a Ö,
nice.
no Ü.
Föhn.
Föhn.
All right, this is gonna turn into me trying to say the word over and over again. So yeah, those are different ways to sit down and learn another language. How I went and tried to learn German, still trying to do it, but other ways that you can do it as well.
Yeah, you should start to label your house. I mean, it takes like once a lot of effort and then just sticks there forever, and it doesn't bother anyone, and you will just learn it by that. And it's helpful, I swear. Like, it's gonna be in your brain forever.
I'll have to get a label maker and print out all that stuff one day and just go around the apartment. I'll probably only have to do it in my room, because if I did it out in the living room, my roommates would probably be like, "You're insane." So
what? I told my mom she was insane when she did that. I told her, "You're crazy to do that. I hate it. I don't want it." And see, now I remember everything she did.
See, I feel like that's where she has some authority to be like, "I'm doing this. It doesn't matter." In my apartment, it's kind of like if my roommates are, like, I don't like this, I'm kind of like, "Oh, okay." I have to take it.
You're too polite. Just be like, "Well,
well, you're learning German too."
Yeah.
We're all learning German here. So
maybe you should label some funny things that they actually don't mind. Like, I don't know.
That they would love to just shout.
Funny, yeah, something like that.
I feel like that would be really nice. And see, that's what I really wanted whenever I grew up. But speaking only English, speaking only family, it's kind of like I tried to tell my mom some German words so she could use them whenever we were speaking, but never caught on. So it kind of becomes like a secret language. Like you were telling about your parents, how they would speak English and you didn't understand it. That's how some of my friends are too, that are in German. They would sit there and speak German, and I'd reply in German too. And nobody else in the room would understand us. And so
cool.
It's kind of like, we could have a full-blown conversation. And that's where I'm like, you guys are amazing for being able to speak other languages fluently, because it's, impressive to me. Right. Well, I thank you guys so much for watching on YouTube and on SoundCloud.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. And if you like to give us some feedback of maybe stories you had or interactions with people where you weren't sure how to react, or just tell us how you reacted to them. Yeah,
and you can send in comment your own media that you use to learn another language, and how you're learning English or German, and how you go about doing that in different media styles, whether it's movies or radio, whatever it be.
And maybe you can give us some suggestions on what to use to learn even more about maybe slang or other parts of the language that we haven't discovered yet. Now you can add. I like that.
All right, nice. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and we will see you guys in the next one. Later.
Bye.